Thursday, March 1st, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So this morning I want to talk about the power behind the precious metals manipulation. Yes, we've seen stories that people have been fined for manipulating the futures, particular traders, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. The more nefarious manipulator of currencies, gold included, is the Tower of Basel Bank, the Bank for International Settlements, a bank that is deceptive, is secretive, is above the law, is supranational, and no one can investigate it. Can you believe that? That no government in the world can investigate this bank? And I'm going to prove how they are the ones. You make up your own mind. It's difficult to prove because you can't call them or have an investigation of this bank and look at their books. It's completely untouchable. It's how can you say, it's the Al Capone is the big boss of the financial world and no one can touch it. So, and they're the ones behind the manipulation of gold. And why is that? Well, because they know that gold is kind of the kryptonite of fiat currencies and the central banks. They know that gold exposes their fraudulent, nature, the fraudulent nature of the monetary system. And I would actually argue maybe that when they started out, they believed in that, and they didn't believe in fiat money, the people at the BIS. But they've kind of adapted and created this monster. And I'll also show you how deceptive they are. But before that, let's have a look at the markets. Gold and silver actually are down quite a bit, like 0.5%, while the currencies are virtually unchanged. And that's why I want to make this video, because it just goes to show how this market is completely, in the hands of these bullion banks, the bullion banks actually operate for these guys, and these guys operate for the central banks. And that's what, the fact that the central banks actually say, oh, no, we don't operate in the gold market. That's true, technically. It's because their bank, the Bank for International Settlements, does it for them secretively. And their agreements are done not on paper, but word of mouth. And I'll prove it to you from that book. So it's 9:15 a.m. London. Gold is down almost $7 at 13.11. The range has been 13.21 to 13.10.50. Silver is 16.30, down 11 cents. We're right near the lows here as usual. The guys in Basel are probably quite busy. It's 10:15 over there in Switzerland. So they're busy doing their thing with the bullion banks. The Dow is unchanged right now at 25,000. So the last 2 days, I think, have proven that, the Dow now is going back down and maybe even retest the low at 23,360 we had in the beginning of February. I think the rally that we had off that bottom is over. I've always said that I think the all-time high from January above 26,600 would be the high for a long time. I could still be wrong, but at the moment it looks like it's looking more and more like that. The markets are fairly quiet except for gold and silver, which are being bashed. But sterling is down 16 pips, or 0.1%, 137.44. Pretty weak. The pound, I think we got more room on the downside. Euro is down 5 pips, which is unchanged, basically 121.88. And the dollar is up about 8 pips against the yen, 106.76. So for some reason, gold and silver, are being hit quite hard. But what else? Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin still languishing here, 10,600. It's up a bit from the lows. Ethereum 866. Litecoin also not doing that well, 207, up a little bit from the 24-hour lows, but off the recent highs around 250. So why do I say the BIS is deceptive? Well, because they come out, for example, they came out, let's say here, there's an article from the 3rd of December, 2017 from The Guardian. I don't read The Guardian, but I found this article. It says, financial markets could be overheating, warns central bank body. Bank for International Settlements, quarterly health check, warns global economy resembles era just before financial crash. And I'll read the article a little bit here. It says, investors are ignoring warning signs that financial markets could be overheating and consumer debts are rising to unsustainable levels. The global body for central banks has warned in its quarterly financial health check. So there you go. You have this bank above the law, mafia boss bank, BIS in Basel, who operates in secret for the central banks, who manipulate exchange rates for currencies, gold and silver. And in order to keep the credit bubble going, they come out and warn that, the system is overheating. So why do they do that? Well, I think it's to cover their asses. Pardon my French, but that's the gist of it. When the crisis comes, no one's going to shine the light on them that they're the ones who made this possible. You see, all this credit bubble. They're the ones, whose rules and regulations are followed by these international banks. With their Basel rules that started out in 1988. No one, in the UK government or the French government or the German government or the US government, any government ever talks about, this corrupt bank, the Bank for International Settlements. Why? Well, because they're in charge of everything. As one of the, I think it was Meyer Amschel Rothschild said in the 19th century, give me control of a country's money or money supply, and I care not who makes the rules. So that's the Rothschild Bank, I would say. Maybe I can't prove it, but it's the bank that follows the Rothschild's motto of, give me control of the money. And that's why the U.S. never had a central bank until 1913, because I think the Americans realized what it entailed. It entailed being under control of the bankers, and the republic would be lost. And that's why President Woodrow Wilson, who signed the Federal Reserve Act into law, made a comment, I think, late in his administration, just after he left the White House, that he basically said there are men behind the scenes that you dare not speak above your breath that run things. And he said he felt very bad about, signing this act into law. So there you have it. That's how they cover themselves. And why do I say they manipulate gold? Well, first of all, let's see, on this book, it says here on page 20 how secretive it is. And I'll talk about it. Let's see. Hjalmar Schacht and Montague Norman on January 20th, 1930 was a date to savor. These were the heads of the Nazi Reichsbank. In 1930, the Nazis weren't in power yet, but it was to become, Hjalmar Schacht was to become Hitler's banker. And Montague Norman was the governor of the Bank of England. So January 20th, 1930 was a date to savor. They had created a bank beyond the reach of either national or international law. So there you go. On that date, the governments of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Japan, and Switzerland signed an extraordinary document The Hague Convention guaranteed that the BIS would be the world's most privileged and legally protected bank. Its statutes, which remain in force to this day, essentially make the BIS untouchable. That's what I said earlier. Article 10 of the BIS Constituent Charter noted, and I quote, "The bank, its property and assets, and all deposits and other funds entrusted to it shall be immune in time of peace and in time of war from any measure such as expropriation, requisition, seizure, confiscation, prohibition, or restriction of gold or currency export or import, and any other similar measures." Do you understand why now there's so much gold activity in Switzerland? Because this is the bank, that buys and sell all the golds for the central banks. And I would argue that they're involved in siphoning all the West's gold to China, because China is part of the BIS now as well. So what about another part of this chapter says, it talks about how they're involved in gold. And it says, the BIS was incorporated under Swiss law. Its authorized activities included the following: buying, selling, holding gold for its own accounts or for central banks, buying and selling securities other than shares, accepting deposits from central banks, opening and maintaining deposit accounts with central banks. So there you go. They are involved in gold. And then you go into later on in the life of this institution, and I'm going to cover the London gold pool from the 1960s. That was a time of when the Western central banks decided to keep the price of gold from moving above $35, because the Bretton Woods agreement was still running, and the U.S. was still promising $35 per every troy ounce. And I read here from page 188. It says, any such doubts were ignored by the governors. In November 1961, the London Gold Pool, or LGP, was set up. The United States, West Germany, France, Italy, Britain, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Switzerland contributed a total of $270 million to the pool. The funds would be used to maintain dollar parity at $35 an ounce. Well, maintain dollar parity, that means is a euphemism for manipulating the price of gold, in line with the Bretton Woods Agreement. The banks would keep the gold price stable by buying and selling when necessary. All of the participating banks agreed not to buy gold themselves on the London market while the pool was in existence. The BIS gold cartel was constructed on conditions of complete secrecy. There was not even a formal written agreement. The banker's word and the handshake was enough to seal the deal. As Coombs noted of the governor's meeting, and I quote Coombs, "However much money was involved, no agreements were ever signed, nor memoranda of understanding ever initialized. The word of each official was sufficient, and there were never any disappointments." The Bank of England carried out the LGP's, London Gold Pool's, monetary transactions, but the BIS was essential to its operations. Every month, the Bank of England reported to an experts group of officials from BIS member banks and the BIS itself, which met at the BIS. So they didn't do it. They did it out of London, but they cover their asses. But the Bank of England, that they were doing it for the BIS, and they would report to them not in London but in Basel, because every month. So do you think they do that still? Of course they do, and but it's above the law. So, but if people like me and others continue to expose them, maybe something will come out of it. So there you go. The most deceptive bank in the world that keeps, says one thing and does something else, so that when things, hit the fan, the spotlight won't be shown, be shining on it. So that's it for now. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And yeah, follow me also on steemit.com and on Twitter. I'll talk to you later. Bye.